Mics are up. Studio is live. Good morning and welcome to Smooth Breakfast. If you're just joining us, this is Smooth 98.1. Smooth Breakfast with Valentine.
And Myra say good morning, Lagos. Hope you're having a good time on the second day of Edinburgh holiday
Mm.
in Nigeria.
And the 13th day of August 2019. Welcome back and thank you for joining us. My name is Valentine Ohu.
And my name is Myra Essay.
And we're together on Freshly Pressed 91. It's a special edition because we have no analysts in the studio, but we're going
Yes.
to analyze the stories with you.
Yes, you are our analyst.
Guess what?
So in the next 30 minutes, we present the stories, we talk about it, and we encourage you to send in your messages, particularly if you've not had the opportunity to have your message read on Freshly Press 91. Today is that day because we will be taking your comments as we want to hear your thoughts and your views on the stories presented this
Feel
morning.
free to send in messages on Twitter. The hashtag is freshlypressed981. Tweet at smooth981fm. You can tag at Ayomiro Essay and at Valentine Ohu on Valentine underscore Ohu on Twitter. We're streaming live on YouTube, so you can watch, subscribe, leave a comment as well. Follow the stories as we go along. We have 8 stories to go through.
Yes,
this
we
morning.
do. And start with our
WhatsApp number.
okay. Oh, WhatsApp number before we start: 0809 444 0981. That's 0809 444 0981. And then we are on YouTube, like Valentine mentioned. Please search for us on YouTube at Smooth 98.1 FM, and you will find us there. Okay, let's go on to our very first story for this morning, and it's from this day newspaper, and we have this headline here: Buhari ignores El Rufai, flies El Zagzaki wife abroad for treatment. Now, this story was quite obviously when it broke yesterday. It was quite popular, and a number of people were talking about it. As finally, the leader of the Islamic movement in Nigeria, IMN, Sheikh Ibrahim El Zakzaki, and his wife Zinat departed the Namdi Azikwe International Airport, Abuja, for India for medical treatments. Just to give you a few, some detail on this story. So the IMN leader and his wife had departed the country for the UAE aboard Emirates Airline flight number EK786 en route to India for the medical treatment. It's important to note, just on the side, that they rejected the presidential jet to fly and rather took the option of the UAE flight. Also, journalists and IMN members were not allowed to see them. However, there's a picture of him on the aircraft. It was said to have departed about 3 p.m. Now, in just in tandem with the state of his health, as had been reported, he was brought in on a wheelchair and taken through the airport lift because he was unable to use the escalator. He was just some details on what doctors had found out and why it was quite urgent for them to have to fly him out of the country. A number of people, the reports that had come to us had listed a few conditions. Now, one of some of such is that the IMN leader is suffering from a total blindness in the left eye and from vision problems in the right eye, including glaucoma and progressive macular atrophy. It goes on to say that diagnosis of the visiting physicians have said that he will lose his vision sooner or later if the current circumstances do not change. There's not much detail on the state of his wife in this report, because I remember, Valentine, you mentioned that once, that yes, she's also been held, or she was held.
When he was picked up and he was arrested or taken into custody, he was taken into custody with his wife.
Yes, and
over 5 years ago.
4 years ago, and he's been in court. He's been in detention despite a number of court rulings asking, giving, telling the federal government to release him on bail for medical leave. Now they've actually done that at the moment. One of the bail conditions was that Kaduna state officials should go with him to India for medical attention.
Yes.
And also, it's interesting to note that as part of the plea of the deal, it was that he's not allowed to seek asylum in India. He cannot seek asylum as a political as a political member. He's not allowed to seek asylum there. So he's expected to return to continue his trial once his done with his medical treatment.
It's interesting to note that as soon as he arrives, the Indian government will carry out the Nigerian High Commission in India, that is, will undertake prior vetting and grant consent before any visitor. It's normal practice before any visitor has access to the defendants or applicants while in the Republic of India. So his safety. That's one of the things
Yes.
to consider. His safety beyond the shores of Nigeria is to some extent guaranteed
Guaranteed,
by
yes.
certain measures and systems that are put in place surrounding him. He's a person of interest in
Yes.
the country. So a lot of eyes and attention of the international community will be on him, following the attitude of the government towards this personality, towards this individual. A
Mm.
lot of people, 6 court orders, international bodies calling. Remember, recently a non-governmental organization had taken Buhari,
Mm.
President Buhari, and the government to the International Criminal Court,
Yes.
alleging that he is indirectly complicit to all the violence that has been going on around the country, maybe connected, maybe unconnected with this El Zakzaki situation.
Yes.
But recent protests have given rise to some of these questions being asked.
All right. Now, of course, the real question would be around if indeed, once since he's out of the country, if he would honor the terms of his medical leave,
He
and
being who? Buhari or El
exactly, no,
Zakzaki?
exactly.
Okay.
If you honor the terms of his medical leave and come back once he's done receiving treatment to face, to continue trial and see it to a conclusion.
But I'm just wondering why the Kaduna State government is feeling the need, El Rufai himself feeling the need to, weigh in on this matter, seeing that this is a major case. This is an
Yes.
international,
Spotlight on
a
it.
spotlight on it. So why people might interpret it as you trying to encourage the federal government to do the wrong thing.
Well, I believe it's because in this case the jurisdiction is in Kaduna State, so the government has a role to play
Yes.
in with regards, because the court had mandated that they should follow him to India. MI from Akwaka makes a very good point here on WhatsApp. He says it is important that he's treated in a medical facility of his choice because it eliminates the suspicion of interference that may arise. It's also a low risk move politically for the government, who would prefer this to any unfortunate outcome. What we have learned is that it takes 6 court orders for government to obey an injunction.
Very interesting. And Vincent from Ibejuleki says, that's in Mecca, Vincent in Mecca, he says, why fly him out now? Why fly him out now? Those who lost their lives wouldn't have if the government had done the needful all this time.
And then Adiola from Yaba says, again, the government have confirmed that if you want to advocate a position resort of violence, quite unfortunate. IMN defiance forced the government to obey several court orders. We have wasted a lot of lives needlessly.
And Faith David from Festac Town joins in and says, the government made a good decision in granting the El Zakzaki's medical trip to India.
They didn't actually. It's not about granting him. The court ordered.
The court ordered that,
in
and
an
they had to
ideal
obey.
situation that you have to obey.
Yes.
So it's not about the government being magnanimous enough to say, okay, it's time for us to let you. This should have been done from the very first court order.
All right.
All right, let's move on to our next story here, and we have this headline still on the minimum wage. Federal government blames labor for minimum wage payment delay. So we have fingers pointing. Yesterday, we took the story about TUC threatening to go on industrial strike action by tomorrow if a deal isn't reached. Now we have a story here saying that the federal government is saying that the implementation of the consequential adjustment of the 30,000 naira new minimum wage to the unrealistic demands of labor unions. So the reason they're blaming labor unions is that what they're bringing to the negotiation table is largely unrealistic. So when the when the minimum wage was increased from 18,000 naira to 30,000 naira, the percentage increase was 66%. Now what Labour is asking for is that 66% should be used across boards, and the federal government is saying that's not realistic. We cannot afford to do that. They've staggered the percentage, so whilst people at a certain level will have a 66% increase.
Yeah, grade levels 1 to 17.
1 to 17. Others will have 9.5%. That's from level 7 to 14. While levels 15 to 17 will have a 30%. Will have a
I think
5%.
25%. That
No,
was the
government is
proposal.
proposing 5% for level 15 to 17. Labour is countering it with the proposed 30%. So
because they dropped their first proposition
From
of
66,
first proposal of 66% down to 30% due to the considerations.
But
that
the
they've
big
put forward.
question that people keep asking is that can the government afford it? So the government is bringing to the table what they're able to afford. And again, another question is affordability versus what is fair.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're going to give an increase, is it fair on the at that level for them to have just a 5% increase, compared to what the state of the economy is, and then what Labour is bringing to the table? Federal government is saying we're ready to make a deal, we're ready to implement, but we are being held back by the demands of Labour, which is unrealistic. But we should ask people out there: do you think that Labour is being unreasonable, or as I would like to read a direct quote here about the magnanimity of the federal government, and I'd like to ask the question: is the federal government being magnanimous in doing the job, or yes? So he says, Egbule, who was at the last meeting, said that he advised Labour to come to a compromise because government had so far been magnanimous in agreeing to increase salaries without any threat of downsizing.
That's Egbule, Richard, Chief Richard Egbule,
Yeah.
the chairman of the National Salaries, Income and Wages Commission.
So again, I had to pause for effect there, because again, they're saying that the federal government is being magnanimous in agreeing to increase salaries without any threat of downsizing. We know that already for many states they are struggling to pay the minimum at the current minimum wage at 18,000 naira. They're struggling to pay their staff salaries, and they have cried out from the very beginning of this proposal of a minimum wage increase that we simply can't afford to pay this. But the federal government has gone ahead to make a deal with the Labour Congress to say that, with Labour to say they're going to increase the fees.
As we'll see in the news and coming stories, we'll still see how that comparison will get across to talk about or touch on political office holders and the demands that they're making for their life pensions and other gratuities and other benefits.
Yeah.
So the real question really is, at that point, when you get to that point of the comparison, are you guys not still within the, or under the auspices of coverage of Nigeria? Are you working from outside the country? You're not foreigners. You're government office holders. You're public office holders within the same system.
Yeah.
And so how are you going to say, is it like a tongue-in-cheek moment? How are you going to say we can't afford minimum wage for civil servants, and then yet you're asking for the same government to pay you these exorbitant fees?
Yes, absolutely.
Exorbitant pensions, life pensions,
And that's why it's
gratuity,
difficult.
things like that.
It's difficult for Labour to agree to saying that they don't have money, because they say if you have money for ABC, then surely you must have money for the Nigerian
Apparently
budget.
they're meeting tomorrow. Do you think they'll come to an agreement?
I doubt it very much.
We discussed
but-
this earlier inside
Yes,
of
I
Business
doubt it very
Express.
much, but we'll keep our eyes on the update and definitely bring you once we get anything new.
Ataba Demide on YouTube joins us. Thank you, Ataba. Ataba says, let's look at the positive side of the Zagzaki issue. This will or should partially stop the IMM protests. The government, especially the presidency, has acted.
There shouldn't even be a protest, because don't forget that they have been they've been tagged as illegal, so there shouldn't
They've been
actually be a
proscribed.
protest. Yeah, they've been prescribed, so there shouldn't actually be a protest. But of course, we know that they threatened to still keep at their protest if El Zakzaki wasn't released.
All right. We'll take a message here on Twitter very quickly before we move on to our next story from Michael Kesiana. He says, still on the Zagzaki issue, he says his wife needs total knee replacement and she has progressive lead poisoning from the bullet's shrapnel. Heard this from his lawyer yesterday on BBC.
Thanks a lot, Michael, for that. All right, let's move on to our next story here from the Daily Times. We have this news on a news story update again on the 9.9 billion naira scam. EFCC invades Lagos Treasury Office. So the Economic Financial Crimes Commission has stormed the Lagos State Treasury in search for vital documents in connection with the 9.9 billion naira fraud allegations rocking the administration of former Governor Akinwumi Ambode. Yesterday, we reported that the former governor has come out to refute these allegations and said that he has nothing to do. He has no knowledge of the 9.9 billion naira fraud. His hands are clean. He has nothing to do with it. But one of the things I must point out here in the story is that there's top government source who confided in the correspondent at Daily Times said that the unscheduled visit of the EFCC sent panic and fears among SCO staff. That's the State Treasury Office staff. And the question is, why the panic? What's the reason for the panic and fear? If it come for an unscheduled visit and your books are clean, why should you be panicking?
Remember last week they went to court to ask the court to grant them access into the books so they can actually review the transactions that were made within the period under review.
Yeah.
Remember that account was allegedly opened around September last year. The accounts that was said to have made where these transfers were made from the state government accounts into.
Yes.
The accounts were specifically to two different banks. And well, Akim Ambode, the former governor of Lagos State, was involved in that because he was the governor at the time.
And
So
then it's linked to his aide. I think one of the strongest connections as well, apart from him being governor, is that it's linked to one of his aides, Mr. Desonya, whom they're also targeting as well.
yes, Kingsley from Ojo sent us a message. He says, as usual now, APC with the playing games. Okay, more messages. Johnson from Alakbara says, Kaduna State is interested in the case because the Islamic movement of Nigeria has traumatized law-abiding citizens of that state, both Muslim and Christian, for too long.
Thanks, Johnson. Tosin Oyedele says to me, salary increase is not and should not be the bone of contention. For me, the only solution lies in the reduction of the salaries of all our senators and of the public office holders and stop this pension in continue. We're going to talk about pensions very shortly. Yes, I'm talking about pensions. But before we talk about pensions, we will look at what's going on with the Papa gridlock. We have another update on that as well. So, presidential team to meet residents today. The presidential task team on the decongestion of Papa gridlock would hold a town hall meeting with all Papa residents later on today. So they're saying this meeting will enable all residents to come up with how to keep the traffic in Papa moving, as well as intimate them on efforts and plans to resolve the perennial traffic challenges.
How is this different from the few meetings they've had in the past?
Well, they say they've taken action. On the 23rd of May, the president issued an order to give all trailer and tanker drivers and operators 72 hours to evacuate all roads and bridges leading to Apapa Port, which they had.
And by my calculations, 72 hours is 3 days,
yeah,
which ended since May 26th.
They've done it, but the only thing was compliance. So in terms of continuous compliance, so when the order was issued, people had talked about the fact that they didn't see trailers and trucks on the road
for a few days.
They started coming in, coming back slowly. So it's checks and balances, and I guess this is why town hall meetings like this are very important. And I do hope that residents of Apapa will come out. It's a public holiday. You're at home. For many people, please.
You know why it's important?
Voices heard.
I like that you mentioned that. It's very important because our town hall meetings are not just for the authorities involved, not for the officials involved alone. Town hall meetings are supposed to involve everybody that's affected by this issue. So everybody really should attend because it gives a chance for ordinary man to speak and get heard and possibly the suggestions implemented.
Absolutely. And it's going to be held now, please listen carefully, at St. Andrew's Anglican Church Hall on Oscar Ibru Way, former Marine Road. So please make your way there. Unfortunately, we do not have the exact time you'll be starting, but I would expect that will be this morning.
And some of the leaders of the various transport unions have been called to be involved in this, such as Coalition of Maritime Transport Unions Association, the Road Transport Employers Association, the National Association of Road Transport Operators, and the Association of Maritime Transport Owners. All these guys have been called in to manage their drivers. Let's look at the next story from New Telegraph. Police inciting personnel against the army, Burutai. On the heels of the unfortunate incident that occurred on the 6th of August, we heard that a certain team, that's the intelligence response team attached to the Inspector General of Police, they were on an operation, a specialist operation, where a kidnapper or the suspected kidnap kingpin was being transported, and they on the road were ambushed by the military, so to speak, or the right choice of words. Now the soldiers released their shots or gunshots on the policemen, and they lost their lives. 3 operatives of the IGP intelligence response team and a civilian were killed in this incident, and the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Tukur Buratai, has accused the force headquarters of making inciting and inflammatory comments. When this broke last week, a lot of people were very anxious. They were wondering, okay, certain comments that trickled in on the show. I remember some people were saying, oh, first it was police brutality against civilians, and now they're turning on themselves, that this is a case of anarchy. It's seeming like a very precarious situation. But then dousing tensions really is one step to take. Another step to take is face reality. There's supposed to be some level of cooperation between forces, between the police and the military, and it's always existent. We find that just 24 hours after that, we had reports of the Burutai actually making a statement saying that there's, through the commander in a certain region in the southeast, actually, saying that there's a level of cooperation that's existent between the military and the police in their fights to stop insurgency and banditry in those areas. So there's a cooperation that still exists, between the ranks.
That should exist, because if we're going to fight crime and maintain law and order in the country, both internal and external,
Hmm.
they must work together, at least to a certain level.
And we know that some of these military personnel actually travel in mufti. People who work undercover or
Mm.
are assigned certain roles that do not necessarily require them putting on uniforms to identify themselves. So there's a risk factor involved, which is what he's expressing in this
Mm.
statement that he released, saying that he fears that this might be blown out of proportion
Mm.
to affect those members that are supposed to be on, would I say, what's the word now? Very sensitive duties,
Mm-hmm.
so I mean, the media coverage, the narrative that's been, but this is a real situation. I
Yes.
mean, if you lost your men in a certain operation that even hampered the investigations that were going on as they were transporting the kidnap
Yeah.
kingpin ran away,
Wadume,
right?
yeah,
Ex-
Alaji, he's
He's on the
wanted,
run.
he's on
He's
the run
wanted.
and he's
Yeah.
wanted.
Mm.
I think it's a bit worrying when you hear statements like this from the COM, the Chief of Army Staff, saying that troops traveling on pass are to endeavor to do so in Mufti. The risk that is to civilians is that we already have a challenge with identifying our personnel's
Mm.
security personnel,
Mm.
because we've had cases of impersonation.
Mm.
How do we differentiate a an army officer or a police officer on in transit in Mufti from bandits?
Normally, it's supposed to be by the ID cards, but
But and
how
even
many
their
of them
uniforms.
would you be bold enough to ask
Don't you
for
dare.
their
So, okay, let me
identity?
not say don't you dare ask, because some of them might take it as a personal affront.
No. Femi on Akaran sent us a message on WhatsApp. Sorry, I'm sorry if I pronounce your name wrongly. But Femi says, truth be told, the whole NLC minimum wage saga is a joke. Government is broke. Civil service is too large. Downsizing is not an option.
Mm-hmm.
Make negotiations a joke. You want to be judge and jury in your own case. The opportunity to effect change elections is never truly taken seriously. Politicians take huge sums of money in benefits and we do not contest. There's no adjudication for fairness. Increase is only implementable in graduation. There are so many jokes in the whole scenario that it makes of the obviousness of the situation of the solution a tragic comedy.
Quite
And
unfortunate.
Solomon sends in this one on minimum wage still.
Oh, he says minimum wage is not meant to be a general wage increase. Those who negotiated on the side of labor knew this and should have put it into consideration when discussions commenced. I expect that since the minimum wage is a law, labor should seek a way by which this increase will be done automatically. A system should be put in place that will address it and put into consideration some variables like inflation and so on. The private sector increases salaries, but we don't hear it in the public space.
Hmm.
Private sector.
I like that this messages are coming in because it links us very nicely into the next story from Premium Times. Now, the headline might sound really happy and very positive, but let's look through the details. Now, the headline, first of all, says pensioners applaud appeal court judgments voiding pension for political office holders. What does this mean? Now, Nigerian Union of Pensioners, yeah, they've reacted to this court ruling, appeal court judgment, that is. They described it as laudable. The appeal court judgment essentially overruled the payments of pension and gratuity and severance allowance to political office holders. Let me just take our minds back a bit to what happened in Bayelsa. We know that Bayelsa state government then, they were asking for life pensions and gratuities. We already know. A case in point, let's give an example from home. Lagos
Yeah.
state governors, once you leave office, you're entitled to at least your 2 years pay equivalent, and then you're given cars, you're given a house here in Lagos, for instance, and
Yeah.
then another one in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. So all these things are perks that are around our political offices, and we
And
always
your
talk
cars
about.
are changed, I think, every 4 years.
Oh yes, and we're told that because of this, these are clear signals
Mm.
that the politicians or the political offices are very attractive. And
Yes.
during electioneering periods, we try to remind folks to be, cognizant of the fact that, have cognizance of the fact that this is not a do or die affair.
Oh, well, listen.
Which
With the package, it makes it a do that.
uh-huh. So, I mean, a case in point that I gave, but the Bayelsa State Governor, Seraki Dixon, had declined to assent to the bill, which was unanimously
Yeah.
upheld by the State House of Assembly at the time. The fever had spread to Ekiti State as legislators in that state assembly had started working on the bill to be presented to Governor Kayode Fayemi for their proposed life pension. And now we're still talking in the same vein, the same statements, still talking about the news of civil service and their minimum wage not being reached. Where does this put us? So where does this where does this leave us? The head information unit of the union, that's the Nigerian Union of Pensioners, Bumi Ogunkolade, reacted to this appeal court judgment in an interview and called for a refund of all the monies already collected. You think that is possible?
I don't. Wow. It
Let,
sounds like music to our ears for
it
many
does.
people, but
Reality
realistically,
against perception. Now we'll take some messages and we'll go to the next stories. This one is from Dr. I. It says the comments on of the army is disgraceful. No apology or remorse from the army. It's so sad that people are justifying murder. Please stop sugarcoating this case. Is there one case that has resulted in the prosecution of soldiers involved in abuses of citizens, on citizens, and the police? Well, the military has a way of handling their cases, especially in recent times. We've heard of cases of mutiny and some of the
yes,
army, military personnel being dismissed, and some of them court-martialed,
yes,
and several cases like that. Even the police recently, I think on 2 or 3 occasions in recent times, have paraded their members who have been caught in the abuse of the civil rights,
yes,
especially in the case of SARS,
yes.
civilians that have been harassed and all that. Now, Comrade Henry sent us a message on WhatsApp. Says, "Good morning, dear anchors. Thank you very much for bringing this to our attention. It's actually a very important issue
Mm.
to raise on suicide. Thank you." Jai Bankole sent in this one.
He said the federal government should stop the light pensions given to politicians and also place them on salary scales like we, the civil servants.
Like I said,
Hmm.
we the civil servants, although we are not, well, on holiday, we're
He
working. Just an aside. Please add your names to your messages so we can take them. This one's from Ehitari Tobore.
says agreement was reached by government and labor before general election. What is the disagreement now? There is no sincerity at all. So the agreement hasn't been rescinded.
Mm-hmm.
The government hasn't rescinded on their agreement. It's just the fine details of the agreement that is being reached. And unfortunately, that's actually the big issue. Not just, or it's easy for you to say, oh, we'll increase salary, etc. But the details are what is being debated at the moment.
And sometimes you expect that, oh, as the president has signed this into law, it will be implemented pronto, but that's not always the case. Like I just said, there's a process involved, and there's a joint committee that has been set up to involve those from the labor unions and part of the federal government to bring this to a conclusive end.
We have some good suggestions on YouTube as to the Papa gridlock situation. Emmanuel Sunny says, town hall meeting, how to keep the traffic moving. Another rhetoric, brethren. We all know how to make a Papa sane again. Short term, trailer parks, ticketing system, and long term, alternate ports in coastal states and train. Many people have talked about these alternate ports in coastal states.
And Emeka Onelum says solving the Apapa problem would require a strong resolve in breaking down the organized cartel making money from the truck drivers. True. Truth said.
Thank you.
Flight delays, cancellations cripple local travel amid traffic surge. From the Guardian newspaper, when I saw this headline, I wasn't surprised because it's expected in this period. In a normal climb, the transport situation, air travel and road travel will be very seamless. And of course, business thrives in this kind of situations, especially the holiday period.
Yes.
For Muslims who are traveling to Hajj or Muslim festivities, so the Salah, and for passengers who are traveling for summer, it's all within this period. Everybody, if you get to the airports right now, there's a huge rush.
Gosh. Local flights have been a nightmare for many people. I've seen some posts on social media of some people's flights delayed by 12 hours. Some people flying in the middle of the night from a flight that was during the daytime, and it's an issue that has been recorded so many times. You wonder why we still have a challenge with this.
Remember on Friday when I mentioned to you, Ayo, that somebody went to the airport and realized that her flight, instead of delayed by an hour like this usual practice, no, it was boarding already when she was like 30 minutes early. So these are the kind of things we would like to see, but the reality is that a visit to the Murtala Mohammed Airport in Ikeja, for instance, revealed that the main hub, which is the main hub of all local airlines, revealed that there were flight delays that were experienced across board, ranging from 1 to 4 hours. Many passengers were left stranded. People reported a poor management of routine schedules. There was delays cut across those who are traveling to Kano, Port Harcourt, Calabar, Owerri, Benin, Kaduna, Asaba, Ilorin, Enugu routes. If you're one of those affected, please let us know. We know that the flight systems are old school, to say the least.
From old school, we don't have enough service providers, to be quite fair. The number of Nigerians traveling by air has increased over the years. Not all talk more of the insecurity issue on our roads. A number of people are trying to avoid the roads, and so
because
it's saturated.
It's dangerous. The roads are not so good. a lot of accidents are occurred in recent times. Now, even this holiday period.
Banditry, we've
Thank
had
you.
cases of kidnapping, so people would rather fly, and the flights are not at disappointing. So what do we do? Where do we go? We need trains. We need more efficient transport services in Nigeria, and we look forward to having that hopefully in the nearest future.
Thank you so much to every single one of you that sent in messages on WhatsApp, Twitter, YouTube. We love you guys. You made this so much fun, so much more
Yes.
fun than we anticipated.
Yes, yes, and thanks a lot to Steve.
Yes.
Steve from Okota for your compliments.
Thank you very much. Coming up next, the excitement doesn't end here. We get into the world of entertainment. Guess who's coming on the show today? Timmy San, T with T.
So I had to do a slap right there.
No, you
but
have
that's his signature.
He'll give you your lessons when he comes in. Grapevine is next.
The